Hey guys, good evening. Thank you for joining. I hope your preparation is going well and you guys are now on par to give your exam. By today, you should have completed all your 12 chapters to go for your NISM certification. But more importantly, you guys should have taken the date for the examination. So in case you have done that, many congratulations that you have been an action taker, and I have no doubt that you guys are going to get the result. So today I'm going to just run through how far we have gone through. So let me open my mind map and then we are going to go by one. And today I am going to be discussing with you a mock test which will have all the questions so that you guys will be able to go through that and understand as what we are how you are should be approaching your questionnaires. Okay, so we as we are in the first leg as we discussed last time, so this is the third session which we are conducting. So by now all of you should be finishing your 12 chapters and you all guys should have taken the exam date. So that is the agenda. We have started on Thursday. So in the 8 days, our aim was to finish your 12 chapters of NISM, give 1.5 hours on a daily basis, so that by now you guys are fully equipped on all the insights which are needed by you to prepare for the certification. But I am pretty sure that if you have gone through those 12 chapters, you are much ahead, or you are 90% above all the mutual fund distributors which are there in the market, because we have shared a lot of insights, a lot of concept which even the branch managers or the employees of the mutual fund company would be not clear of. So we have done till now, and today my agenda is to discuss with you one of the mock test paper so that you know how really it is happening. And from today onwards till Monday when we are going to meet next, I want you guys to finish all your 5 question papers. You have to go through all these 5 question papers so that you are fully ready, and then anytime you can give the exam. So to start with, I'm going to discuss the mock question paper third with you today, and then you will have some ideas how to approach it, and then start giving the question papers. So once you give the question paper, you will have a very clear idea that how you are going to approach that. And once we have done that, at the end of the session, I am going to also ask you, in case you have any doubt, you have any question, you can ask me. So let's dive into the question paper which I have given you and discuss one by one so that you guys will be having idea. I will be sharing my perspective as how you should be approaching those questions. Okay. So I hope you guys are able to see my screen. Yes. So I am going to discuss with you. This is a question paper number 3. So this I am going to discuss with you one by one. So let's start with question number 1. If you see, the question is, which one of the following is not an eligible investor in mutual funds? So which kind of individuals or non-individuals cannot invest in mutual funds? So through mutual funds, only insurance companies, government institutions, provident funds, and foreign citizens, the option was there. So foreign citizens cannot invest directly in mutual funds. They need to first register with SEBI as a foreign portfolio investor. And once they register as FPIs, then they can invest in mutual funds. So directly they cannot invest in mutual funds. So that we need to be aware of. The second question is, which investment below gives international exposure? So we have option gold, international funds, none, both. Now see, international funds are very obvious since the name itself is in international funds. So most of the investment would be going out of the geographies of India. What we mean by international, that whenever any scheme is investing money beyond our what we say beyond our geographical boundaries, that is considered as an international fund. And gold also is considered an international fund because if you have gone through the course, we have discussed in detail that the valuation of gold in the portfolio will be taken through the rate which is there in the London exchange. So this is also having an international exposure because the valuation of gold is always in relation with what is happening in the foreign market. So these two funds are considered as the global exposure, international exposure fund. So we need to select both. The third question is on doing risk profiling, which asset allocation does it give? Strategic, fixed, flexible, or tactical asset allocation. Now, please remember what we are talking about is once you have done the risk profiling of your client, how to do risk profiling that we have discussed in the chapter 1. In case you have not gone through, please go through chapter 1 and do the proper risk profiling of your client. First, do your risk profiling so that you are clear on that. Now, once you do the risk profiling, what we have fixed asset allocation. What we mean by, let's discuss one by one all the options. The first option is strategic asset allocation. What we mean by strategic, it is a asset allocation which will by and large will be constant throughout the financial goals of the client. So your client is going to invest for say retirement or for kids education. The asset allocation which we are going to do for those goals will be almost constant for the whole period. What we are going to do, we are going to rebalance in between every now and then. So that is called strategic asset allocation. What is fixed asset allocation? Fixed asset allocation is we are going to fix a rate that I want to invest 60% in equity, 20% in debt, 30% or 10% in cash, and so on and so forth. That is called fixed asset allocation. Now, flexible asset allocation is I will keep shifting the allocation in various asset class depending upon the market. So if I'm going to do that, that is called flexible asset allocation. And tactical asset allocation is all more or less same as flexible, where I'm going to take a call depending upon the market situation, not on the individual's financial situation. So in this case, the option which we need to choose is strategic asset allocation, because as I told you, this is, allocation is depending upon the financial goals of the client. Okay, so this is one thing which we need to keep in mind. Most of the time we get confused on that. Now the next question is on the calculation side. In a balanced fund with the net asset of 750 crore, accrued expenses are 25 crore and expenses incurred is 25 crore. Dividend incurred is 50 crore. Total outstanding units is 25 crore. What is the NAV of the scheme? So if you have gone through that chapter, it will be very easy for you, but let me explain you once again. Here, what we need to understand is the total asset of the scheme is 750 crore. Now the fund has accrued expenses, which means this money they need to give to the whoever they are liable to pay. And 25 crore already they have paid. Then they are these two expenses which they have paid and what has to be paid, these both things has to be deducted from the assets because that has to go away. Now the dividend incurred is, this is the money which already has been declared by the companies in which the fund has invested, okay, but they have not received that money. But in the concept of calculating NAV, if you remember, we have discussed in the tutorial that the accrued concept is applicable. It means if it has been declared and it is going to come, we are going to consider that into our NAV calculation. So we need to give 50 crore. We are going to get 50 crore. It means net, it is a zero impact on the total assets. So if it is the zero impact, so how we are going to calculate the NAV? 750 crore is the total asset divided by the 25 crore units we have. And if you divide, we are going to get 30 as the NAV of the scheme. So like this, we are going to calculate this. Now let's come to the next question, which is, I invest 50 lakhs at 2:30 p.m. with a local check for the funds other than liquid scheme. Which NAV will you get? Now, NAVs are only allotted by the mutual fund company if they receive your money before the cutoff time on a particular business day. So any day, whenever you are submitting your check or you are doing RTGS, even for single rupee, if you are purchasing in mutual fund scheme, you are only going to be allotted NAV of the purchase when they are going to receive money, and when the cutoff time is what? The for equity scheme it is 3 o'clock, for the liquid scheme it is 1 o'clock or 1:30, I suppose. I hope you have gone through the course. So if the mutual fund companies receive the money of the client before the cutoff time on a business day or a working day, then only you are going to receive NAV of that day. Okay, so the option should be fund realization day NAV. Okay, so that day NAV only you are going to get. Now the other question is, what is the dividend distribution tax for an individual in a liquid fund? Now, if you remember, we have discussed in detail in the taxation chapter that what is the various dividend distribution tax. For equities, it is 10%. For liquid, it is 25% plus surcharges and uh, the, uh, the what we say surcharges. There is a 12% surcharges and 4% cess. So if you put all these things, it will be at 29.12. But what you need to understand is the base rate for dividend distribution tax in a liquid fund is 25%. That you need to understand. Now, liquid fund will have a higher dividend distribution tax compared to other debt funds. The other debt funds, what is the dividend distribution tax? For the other debt funds, the dividend distribution tax is that is not dividend distribution, that is the indexation. After indexation, what is the long-term capital gain tax they need to pay? So the long-term capital gain tax which you need to pay on debt scheme is 20% post indexation. But the dividend distribution tax for all debt funds are 25% plus surcharges. So that we need to remember. So this is another question which is very crucial. Most of the time you are going to get in your examination. The next question is, if the client invests in a liquid fund at 11:30 a.m. and get the funds cleared on the same day, which day NAV the client gets? Now, please remember, if you are going to give the money to a mutual fund scheme on the working day before cutoff time, in liquid funds, you get historic NAV. Now, what we mean by historic NAV? You are going to get previous day NAV. So what you need to remember, suppose today is Wednesday, and if you give the money to a mutual fund company before cutoff time in the liquid funds, then you are going to get an NAV of Tuesday. This can be used to get corporate money. If you ask your corporate to put that investment on Friday, they are going to receive an NAV of Thursday, and you can give them money on Monday. So most of the time, if they will get interest of Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because anyways on weekends, they will not be using that money for a effective purpose. So this also you can use, but from the examination point of view, you need to remember that in liquid fund, you are going to receive historic NAV or the previous day closing NAV whenever you are giving money before the cutoff time. Okay. Then the next question is, what is true about premium paid in a life insurance company? I think it is self-explanatory. Whatever money you are going to pay as a premium, that is going to be deducted under section 80C. Okay. A person with whom the units are pledged is known as pledgee. Person with whom the units are pledged. Now, if you remember, and let me tell you that against the mutual fund units, you can take loan. Most of the, like SDFC will give you instant loan. Suppose you are going to pledge your units, if you have a SDFC bank account, then immediately you will be able to get instant loan against whatever investment you have in mutual fund schemes. So if you are pledging your units, then with whom, suppose in case you are giving or pledging your units to SDFC, then SDFC is pledgee. Pledgee means with whom we are pledging our units. Okay. And the person who is going to take loans for his mutual fund investment, he will call pledger. So this we need to remember from the examination point of view. SEBI is the sole regulator for MF for MF are answerable. SEBI is the sole regulator. Now, if you remember, we have discussed that for some liquid funds, the RBI is the regulator. Now, mutual funds are regulated by SEBI. SEBI has a full-fledged units to regulate each and every affair of mutual funds. But there are some schemes like liquid funds where money market instruments are involved. In that, RBI has the regulatory authority. But for the examination point of view, what you need to select? You need to select that SEBI is the sole regulator. But please remember, we have discussed in detail in the course also that for liquid funds, the money market instrument, whenever the mutual funds are investing, then RBI will have its jurisdiction. The other question is, what is company fixed deposit compared to bank? How is company fixed deposit compared to bank fixed deposit? Now, company fixed deposits will be less safer than the bank fixed deposits for the simple reason that if you remember, bank fixed deposits are insured up to 5 lakh rupees by Deposit Insurance Credit Guarantee Corporation. That also we have discussed. That's why here the option which we need to put select is it is less safe. Company fixed deposit less safe than bank fixed deposits because bank fixed deposits are insured, whereas company fixed deposits are not. How much within how many days the dividend warrants to be dispatched on declaration? The answer should be 30 days. Now, this is more of a theory part. You need to mug it up. We have discussed in detail and it is also available in your cheat sheet. So please go through that so that you have clarity on that. The distributor needs different ARN for each AMC. The distributor should have only one ARN for all the mutual fund companies which are available in India. A conservative investor needs to be advised to invest in gilt fund, liquid fund, high yield bond fund, short term plan. Now here the question is a conservative investor need not be advised. So in this all four options which has been given, the most volatile or risky fund will be high yield bond fund. What we mean by high yield bond fund? High yield bond funds are those funds where companies giving high interest rate for the money which they are borrowing. Now, which company is going to give you high interest rate? The company whose fundamentals are not very good or which companies which are very new in the market, people don't know or people don't trust. So there the risk will be high. That's why they are paying higher interest. So because of that, the risk is high. That's why for a conservative investor, the risk highest will be in the high yield bond fund. Okay, so that we need to remember. The National Pension Scheme is both regulated by IRDA and PFRDA as it has an insurance component. That is wrong. NPS is only regulated by PFRDA. Which is the fastest way of remitting funds on a real-time basis? So our answer is RTGS. It is doubt because every time it keeps on changing. Most likely you are not going to get this kind of questions in your examination. Which of the following is the financial asset? Government security, gold, real estate. Now here the gold means physical gold. So if you're investing in physical gold, that is not a financial asset. But in government security, if you want to buy government security, you need to pay in cash and then you are going to get cash back. So that's why it is called government security as a financial asset. Which of the following is an SRO? See, please remember this is a wrong option which we have selected. AMFI is not a self-regulatory organization. SRO means self-regulatory organization. SEBI and IRDA, these two are SRO. They are a self-regulatory organization because they have been created by the act of the parliament. So they have the authority to regulate themselves and all the companies or all the sectors which they have been assigned for. So like SEBI will regulate capital market, mutual funds, anything to do with the capital market that will be regulated by SEBI. AMFI is not an SRO organization, that you need to remember. NFO other than ELSS can remain open for a maximum of 15 days. Only closed-ended fund. ELSS is what? ELSS is a closed-ended fund. It means even if you want, you will not be able to withdraw money. before the maturity period. Okay, so ELSS is a close-ended fund. All close-ended funds can be opened for a maximum of 30 days. But any scheme which is launched and which is not a close-ended fund, those are only will be allowed to open for 15 days. That you need to remember. In NFO, the account statement is to be dispatched within days on the closure of NFO. After closing of NFO, within 5 days, the statement has to be dispatched. Now, this thing you need to remember from the examination point of view. Companies issuing short-term debt fund is called CP. Please remember there are two components. CP is what? Commercial paper. CD is certificate of deposits. Any borrowing which the banks are doing for less than 1 year, it is called CD, that is certificate of deposit. And any company which is going to borrow for less than 1 year, it is called CP, which is certificate commercial paper. So that you need to remember, because this will help you in your examination. Within a category, one can decide on investment based upon Sharpe ratio. Sharpe ratios are those ratios which is going to tell you how much risk the fund manager or the scheme has taken to deliver the return. Return per unit of risk taken is called Sharpe ratio. Higher the Sharpe ratio, better it is, because lesser risk the company is taking to deliver higher return. Okay, so that you need to remember. Higher the Sharpe ratio, better it is for the scheme, and that you need to take. In which of the following exempt from dividend distribution tax? Equity oriented fund, liquid funds, income funds. Now, earlier what used to happen before 2018, equity funds were not having dividend distribution tax. But after 2018, all the schemes, whether equity or debt, every fund will have a dividend distribution tax. So the answer is none of the above. The arbitrage funds are taxed like debt funds. No, arbitrage funds are having that advantage that they are treated as, for the taxation part, they are treated as an equity fund, but they will have a risk profiling which is equivalent to debt fund. So they will have a lesser risk, but they will have a taxation of equities. That's why a lot of corporates prefer to invest in arbitrage fund, because arbitrage fund will give you less risk, but the taxation will be low, or of equity taxation. So they are going to benefit from that. So instead of paying 25% or 30% dividend distribution tax in debt, they go for arbitrage fund where they need to pay a 10% dividend distribution tax. So that you need to remember. Which of the below is not in a transition phase? Now, what we mean by transition phase, when an individual is graduating from, say, from his working phase to a retirement phase. So in between the period is called transition phase. So which of the below is not a transition phase? Shifting of a job for higher income. So if you are in a working phase, if you are in an earning phase, in that phase you keep on jumping from one to another. So that will be not considered as a transition phase. From your childhood to your adult phase, that is a transition phase. But if you're shifting a job, it is not considered as a transitioning phase. That you need to understand. Name of the NAV of a scheme is impacted by market value of the portfolio. That is the only thing that is going to impact the NAV of the scheme. That is very obvious. In case any of the thing is not clear to you, just type in the comment box. I am going to re-explain to you. Technical analysis is projecting trend based upon human behavior. That is correct. What is technical analysis? Technical analysis is based upon the supply and demand of the money or the stock in the market. And how the buying or selling will happen, it will depend upon the psychology of the investor. So if I think that that stock is going to go up, I will put more demand in the market. Or if I think that a stock is going to come down, I'm going to sell those stocks in the market. So if I'm going to do that, that is depending upon my understanding, not on the fundamentals, but my thinking of what can happen in the future. That's why we need to select stick true as an option, because the technical analysis is projecting the trend based upon the human behavior. Sub distributors work with distributor companies. I think that is very obvious. You all would be able to understand that. The initial issue expenses can be charged to fund nil. You, earlier, what used to happen, the initial expense for the advertisement, for promotion, for telling all those information was charged initially to the fund, whatever the fund has mobilized. But now they have, SEBI has banned this. They are saying that whatever expense you are going to incur for promoting any new scheme, those things you are going to be getting into, or those things you are going to charge to fund over a period of time. So that is the difference that we need to remember, that the initial expense cannot be charged to the fund on the first day itself. It will be amortized over a period of time. It will be deducted over a period of time. According to performance advertisements, the return shown for equity funds over a year are in a CAGR mode, that is compounding basis. The return of mutual funds of equity schemes are shown. For debt schemes less than a year, the returns will be shown in an annualized manner, because for less than a year, the returns of a debt schemes would be very low and it will not be able to make sense by the client. So SEBI allows that less than a year for debt schemes, the return can be annualized, but for equity schemes less than a year, the performance should be absolute. So if I am showing 3 months return, for equity scheme, it will be the exact return which the fund has delivered. But for debt fund, it will be annualized. It means, suppose I am showing you return of 1 month, so I am going to multiply by 12. So I will show you that 12% return. Suppose in 1 month the scheme has delivered 1% return, then I'm going to show you 12% annualized return. Whereas in equity, if I am going to show you return of 1 month, if the fund has given 3%, I'm going to write 3% only, so that you will be able to understand that. More than a year for equity or debt, all the performance which will be published or advertised will be in a CAGR mode. That you need to understand. In new pension scheme portfolio of asset class E, predominantly invest in E, stands for equity, that we need to remember. Expense ratio is most important in case of index fund, offshore fund, active fund, fund of funds. Now, please remember, whenever anyone is investing in a passive fund where the active involvement of fund manager is not there, SEBI has restricted the expense which can be charged to the fund, because the active involvement of fund manager is not there. So in that case, what is going to happen? In that case, you guys are going to be paying less and less, or in fund charges less and less, because the performance of the index funds are just replica of the benchmark. So if the expense ratios are more, the performance of the index fund will be lesser than the benchmark, because the expense ratio will drag down the performance of the scheme. Okay, so for any passive fund, whenever you're investing, the expense ratios are very important, because the lesser the expense ratio, the better it will be the fund for the fund to match the performance of the benchmark. The code of ethics of the employees of an AMC is described by MFI. Now, what this means is all the employees which are working in mutual fund companies, they have some restrictions in terms of the stocks they can buy, and the declaration process is very robust. Okay, so all these things we need to be mindful of, and that will be given by instruction by MFI, that we need to remember. In transition phase of wealth cycle, investors tends to increase the proportion of asset in his portfolio. So whenever our client is transitioning from, say, working phase to retirement phase, he don't want to take much risk on his investment, because the cash flow will be, or the active income would be very, very low going forward. So he wants to take lesser risk, and then he can put that money into the liquid fund, so that in liquid fund the volatility in the investment would be very low. Which of the following is a financial assets? Now it is very obvious, gold is not, real estate is not, the bank deposit is a financial assets. Index funds can give better return from its benchmark. As I told you, passive funds or index funds are just going to replicate the performance of what? performance of the indexes. So it cannot give better return. If it is giving better return, it is not for good for the performance of the scheme is not good. Whenever we are investing in an index fund, it is very obvious that we want to put our money to replicate the performance of the index. Okay. A young BPO executive should not be advised to invest in long-term schemes because of their lavish lifestyle. If the investor is young, he should be investing for long-term benefits. Okay, so this is false. If he's a young any executive, if he's young, he need to invest in long-term schemes only. And by long-term schemes, what we mean? Equity schemes. Okay. The value stock picking is used in which of the following? Top down, bottom up, both, or none of the above. Now, please remember, what is value picking? Value picking is we are going to go against the trend. So how we are going to find? By going bottom up. What we mean by bottom up? We are going to first analyze the company, then we are going to analyze the sector in which that company is, then we are going to analyze the economy of the country in which that company is. So this is called bottom up. What is top bottom? The top down approach is when I am going to see the economy of the country, then I am going to select the sector which is likely to do well, and then I am going to select the company. So in the value investment approach, I am going to follow a bottom up approach where first I am going to analyze the company, even if it is in the booming sector or it is into a sector which is not performing well. But if the company's fundamentals are good, if the management is good, I'm going to pick that company. So it is called bottom up approach. What is the applicable rate of STT in case of purchase of equity scheme? It is 0.001. In last budget, they have changed. Now it is 0.005. So please remember the STT rate now is 0.005. It is applicable on purchase of the scheme. Market value is 152 crore, dividend accrued but not received is 8 crore, liabilities are 2 crore, total number of outstanding units is 75 lakhs. What will be the NAV of the scheme? Now you see dividend is accrued but not received. It means it has to be added to the value of the scheme. And liabilities are 2 crore. It means this money we need to give to the entities to whom we need to repay. So what is the total value which we need to add to the asset? 8 crore minus 2 crore, which is 6 crore. So 152 crore plus 6 crore is 158 crore divided by 75 lakhs. Now, please remember, when you are dividing, you should not divide 158 by 75 lakhs. This is in lakhs, this is in crore. So you need to convert this into what? This you need to convert into crores. So 158 divided by 0.75, you are going to get this number. So like this, we need to calculate the NAVs. 1 or 2 questions are definitely going to come. So you need to prepare well. Investor selects an MF based on investment objective. What is the investment objective of investor, and the objective of the scheme should be aligned whenever anyone is selecting any scheme. Has been appointed by trustee. Trustee appoints AMC, that is asset management company, and R&T, custodian and distributors are appointed by AMC. This we have given in detail, I think in chapter 3 or 4. So you need to go through in case you have not gone through up till now. Risk may be defined as financial loss. That is very obvious. What is the risk? It is a financial loss. Financial planners defines that the client does not have resources to meet goals. He should inform the client. We as in financial advisors, we should be very, very transparent with our investor. What is feasible, what is not feasible, we should be very upfront with our client. If we keep our client dark, if we don't talk in a transparent manner, we will not be able to get the trust of our client. So client respect our transparency, and we all should be doing that. Which of the following account in NPS is a savings account? Tier 2 is a saving account. Tier 1 will have a restrictions. You will not be able to withdraw money unless you are retired. And tier 2 is just like your savings bank account. Whenever you want to invest, you can invest. Whenever you want to withdraw, you can withdraw money from that account. Mutual fund is exempted from wealth tax. Now there is no more wealth tax in India. Earlier it used to be there. Now for any investment, there is no wealth tax. So you can choose through in this option. KYC is required for investment of more than even single rupee you want to invest. You need to do KYC. The only change here, what you need to understand is if you are investing or your customer is investing less than 50,000 rupees, then you can do a micro KYC. What is micro KYC? It is a KYC which is without PAN card. Okay, without PAN card, you can invest up to 50,000 rupees in a financial year, and that KYC will be based upon Aadhaar, based upon driving license, based upon your uh, ration card. So all this you can use to get your KYC done. But if you are doing a micro KYC, you can invest only up to 50,000 rupees in a year. So that you need to remember. But if you are investing more than 50,000 rupees, then you need to do PAN based KYC. If a minor invests 10,000 rupees in MF, KYC need not, or KYC needed or not. So as I told you, KYC is needed. If a minor is doing, then the person or the guardian who is investing on behalf of the child or the minor, his KYC needs to be done. Since preparation of will is a long process, it has to be avoided. That is false. That is very obvious. The will should always be prepared in case of you are doing a proper financial planning for the client. Close-ended funds allows investors to sell their units. In a close-ended fund, mutual funds are not, or mutual fund companies are not going to buy the units. The units can only be bought or sold in a closed-ended fund through exchanges, because all closed-ended funds should be compulsorily listed on a browser or the NSE or BSE platforms. Now, please remember, there also liquidity is not assured. It doesn't mean that the closed-ended funds are listed. It means whenever you want to sell, you will be able to sell. Now, at the exchange, the demand and supply will be depending upon whether somebody is ready to buy or not. So if you are ready to sell and nobody is ready to buy the units from you, then again, there will be a liquidity problem. So please remember that a close-ended funds, you will be able to sell on the exchanges depending upon buyers are ready. So please remember that you can sell a close-ended schemes at the exchange. The mutual fund companies are not going to buy before maturity of the scheme of a close-ended fund. So please remember that. Allots the ARN number. MP will be allotting the ARN number to the mutual fund distributor. Application of MF should be rejected if paid in cash. So please remember, in cash, most of the mutual fund companies are not accepting investments. But by regulation, up to 50,000 rupees, you can invest in mutual funds through cash. How this works out? This works out like this. If your client wants to invest money through cash up to 50,000 rupees, you can invest in any mutual fund scheme. Now, most of the mutual fund schemes who are accepting investment through this mode, they will have tie-up with the bank. So what they will ask you for, they will ask you to deposit that money into the bank. With the receipt and application, you can submit the application to a mutual fund company, and then they are going to process it. I have a knowledge that UTI does that, but most of the bigger companies are not accepting that, or you need to get in touch with the concerned RM in your area in case you want to do any cash transaction for your client. Okay. But remember, even though you are investing through cash, the withdrawal of the money or the investment will happen only into the bank account of the client. So they are investing, they can invest through cash up to 50,000 rupees. The withdrawal of the money will happen only into the bank account of the customer. Mutual fund investor can pledge the units, as I told you. If you are you have invested in mutual funds, or your client has invested in mutual fund, against those units you can take a loan. It is called loans against securities. You can explore that option. Change in the value of NAV is standard risk or a systematic risk. Both are more or less same. Standard risk is what? It is applicable to each and every investment whoever is doing. Which one is called cum dividend NAV? So suppose any fund or any scheme is declaring any dividend, After dividend, the NAV will come down. How much? Till the extent the NAV has, the dividend amount has been declared. Now, please remember, suppose our scheme has declared a 10% dividend. This means what? This means that the every unit the investor is holding, he is going to get 10% or 1 rupee of dividend. How the 1 rupee has come? 1 rupee has come because all the face value of mutual fund units are 10 rupees. Now I have dived deep into that. If you go through the course, you will be able to understand better. But what you need to understand is NAVs or the dividends are always declared on the face value. And most of the mutual fund schemes will have a face value of how much? Face value of 10 rupees. So if a fund has declared a dividend of 20%, this means what? The customer is going to receive 2 rupees per unit as a dividend. 20% of 10 rupees, which is 2 rupees. So come dividend NAV is what? If I have declared a dividend of 20%, it means I'm going to give you 2 rupees per unit dividend. And after dividend, the NAV will come down by 2 rupees. That is called dividend come NAV, because after dividend, the NAV will come down till the extent of the dividend declared. This is called dividend NAV concept. So you need to remember that. When a scheme is first launched and investor invest in MF, it is called NFO. The first time investment is NFO. Scheme document is the summary of SID and SIGN. SID is information document, and SIGN is a document which will have all the information about the mutual fund company. SID will have all the information regarding the scheme, and SIGN will have all the information regarding the mutual fund companies and its structure and so on and so forth. So KIM will be a shorter version of all these two documents. The offer document is comprised of SID and SIGN both. So please go through that in case you have not gone through that chapter as of now. If investor invests in a gilt fund at 3:30 p.m., he should get the units at which NAV. Please remember what this question is saying. Till at 3:30 p.m., the company has received the money. Since the company has received the money after cutoff time of 3 p.m., the NAV which the client is going to get is of the next working day. They are saying that the money has come, invested. The client has already invested. Okay. So NAV you are going to get is of next working day. If the client would have given the check at 3:30, then the client is not going to receive NAV of next day. The client is going to receive NAV of when? When the company is going to receive the money before cutoff time. So you need to be very clear on this concept. In case you have not gone through the course, please go through the course so that you have a crystal clear idea. Because this cutoff timing concept, you should be very, very clear, because it will have a financial impact on your client's investment. Now, suppose your client has today given a 5 lakh rupees check, and you, for any reason, you are not able to deposit, or the application not processed, or application process, the money has not come into the mutual fund bank account on that required period of time, then what is going to happen? Then the NAV will be allotted of the next days. And if the market has gone up, the client will say, if you would have processed the application on the same day, I would have got 1 or 2 rupees lesser NAV. So that is a loss for the client, and he may ask you for the money. Same way, if the investor has asked you to withdraw the investment, and you process after 1-2 days and market has come down, the NAV will come down, and the client will say, I am facing the loss, you need to repay that. So you need to be very clear on the NAV and the cutoff timing so that you don't get into that trouble. Okay. The guidelines issued by AMFI for intermediaries is known as AGNI, that you need to remember. Time stamping arrangement is must for every application, has to be time stamps. This we have gone in detail if you go through the NISM 5-year course, that how the time stamping works. That is the only way through which the regulator and company knows that whether the application has been processed before cutoff time or not. So please remember that the timestamp machines are present at all the points of acceptance, which is officially declared by the mutual fund company. Unaudited accounts of the scheme must be published in the newspaper on every 6 months basis. An investor invests 1 lakh rupees in a 1365 days FMP and got 1,07,750 rupees. What will be the capital gain in this case? Now, please remember the client has invested in FMP, so it is a debt scheme. Now, client has invested for more than 3 years because he has invested for 1365 days. So he will be eligible for long-term capital gain, the taxation benefit in a debt scheme. Now, here what he's asking, he's not asking what is the capital gain tax. It is asking what is the capital gain. So capital gain is what? He has invested this much, he has got this much, so 7,750 rupees is his capital gain. If it asks you what is the capital gain tax he need to pay, then do you need to calculate the indexation benefit, and then you need to calculate the tax which he need to pay. So there is a difference between capital gain tax and capital gains. Capital gains means what is the profit which the client has made. If they ask for what is the capital gain tax the client need to pay, then you need to follow the whole process, which is you need to calculate the indexation benefit for the client. It means you need to inflate the investment value for the investment period, and then you need to deduct the maturity value or the withdrawal value, and then you need to calculate the 20% the tax which the client has to pay on the long-term investment. In case you are not clear on this concept, please go through the taxation chapter in the NISM 5-year success kit course. STT is charged on all of the above: derivative trading, equity share trading, and mutual funds. An investor plans to invest 12,000 in a mutual fund scheme. The NAV is 12. How many units is likely to be obtained? 12,000 divided by 12, that is the answer you are going to get. A company's earning per share would be indicated by EPS, that is the formula which you need to be following. Beta of an index fund would be 1. What is beta? Beta is going to tell you how volatile the scheme performance would be compared to the benchmark. Now, if I am investing in an index fund, I am going to ask my fund manager to follow the performance in a benchmark. So the beta should be 1, so that the performance of the benchmark and scheme should always be same. While evaluating return of an index fund across the peer group, which of the following is more important? Tracking error, because as I told you, tracking error is going to give you indication how much above or below the performance of the index fund or a passive fund is compared to its benchmark. So for any index fund or a passive fund, what we are saying? We are saying that they need to follow the performance of the benchmark, neither more nor less. If I want to outperform the benchmark, then I'm going to invest in an active fund and not in a passive fund. If I am investing in a passive fund, my agenda, my goal is to make you understand or make the investment which is just going to follow the underlying asset or the benchmark in which I am investing. So if the fund is having above or below performance, that fund is not good. And how to track that? Through the tracking error. So if a fund is having a higher tracking error, we need to we don't have to choose those funds because that is not going as per the objective of the scheme. Fund sponsors should have a sound financial track record of 5 years. Those who are sponsoring the mutual fund, they should have a track record. What is the PFF rate? I think that you will keep on changing. Our father wants his son to be a doctor and his study will start after 5 years. The current expense is 25 lakhs. How to calculate the expense after 5 years? We need to calculate the future value of what is the current cost. And for the formula is this. You need to remember this formula so that you can pick the correct option in the examination. Appropriate benchmark for a GSEC fund is ISEC plus IBX. This is a benchmark which is created by ICICI. So you need to just mug it up. Which of the following has the lowest risk? Liquid funds will have the lowest risk. Now, please remember how you are going to ascertain which funds will have how much risk. Equity funds will have higher risk than the debt funds. And in debt funds, those funds the funds which are having the lowest maturity period in their portfolio will have the lowest risk. Now, liquid funds are those funds where the maturity profile of the papers which the funds will have will be less than 90 days. So those securities which a liquid fund is buying, they will have a maturity period of less than 90 days. So these are the lowest risk funds in the mutual fund schemes which are available. So you need to remember that. In case you are not clear on that, please go through chapter number 11, where we have dived deep into what is the risk hierarchy of all the mutual fund schemes. So if you're not clear, please go through that. If I require 50,000 rupees after 2 years, which method will I follow? Now, this option is wrong. Please understand. He's saying, I want 50,000 rupees after 2 years, not today. If I want 50,000 rupees after 2 years, then I need to know how much money I need today to invest so that I get 50,000 rupees after 2 years. And how we are going to do that? We are going to discount it. Discount method means if I am going to invest money at the rate of say 8% today, how much money should I be investing so that I can get 50,000 after 2 years? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to divide 50,000 by, suppose I'm going to invest in a scheme which is going to give me 10%. So I'm going to divide by 1.10 raised to the power 2 so that I know how much money I am going to be investing today. This concept are of the financial planning. We don't have to go into that. But what you need to understand is if I want some money after X period of time, then I need to discount so that I know how much money I need to invest today. Okay, so you need to select the right option. Mutual fund sponsors can be compared to a promoter of the company because they are the guys who are going to start that journey of a mutual fund company. Which of the following can be charged to the scheme? Fee of the custodian. All the other charges are going to be beared by the AMC, that is asset management company. It cannot be charged to the scheme. So what can be charged to the scheme or what cannot be charged to the scheme, that also has been discussed in detail in the chapter. So please go through that so that very clear. Please don't be in the mindset that you need to do for the examination purpose. What I keep on telling, if you know all this thing, if you have the inside knowledge, you will be very confident when you are going to the market. So please keep that aspect in mind. Low PE compared with the peer group or the industry standards indicate that stock is cheap. That is very correct. PE ratios are going to tell us how expensive or how cheap that stock is compared to its benchmark. Higher the P, higher is the or expensive is the stock. So that we need to also keep in mind. What would be the redemption value of a unit if the NAV is 15 and the exit load is 1%? Now, please remember, if the exit load is 1%, it means what? The company is going to deduct that as an expense, or that is the penalty which you are going to pay. So the money which you are going to receive would be less than the market value of the scheme at that point of time. So NAV will be coming down, not going up. So most of the time, what the students do, they are going to 15% ka 1%, it is 0.15 paisa. They are going to take 15.15. Now, please remember, if you are going to take 15.15, it means client is going to receive higher value. 15.15 into number of units, it means you are going to receive higher value. But since this is an exit load, it means the client has to pay penalty. It means he need to receive lesser value. And if he has to receive lesser value, he should be getting money based upon the lower NAV. So the correct option is 14.85, not 15.15. That you need to understand the logic. Last steps in the process of designing a model portfolio is scheme selection. Understand, scheme selection is the last and least important thing. What you need to do to be an effective is, first you need to understand the client's requirement, his cash flow, then you need to do the risk profiling, then asset allocation, then you are going to select the scheme. All of us, what we are going to do, we are going to select the best scheme based upon performance, and then we keep on putting all our energy in selecting the mutual fund scheme. But what ideally should be, you need to first understand the requirement of the client, understand the cash flow, understand the risk profile, then you need to do the asset allocation, and then the scheme selection should be happening. For a distributor channel, 60% of employees should have an empty registered number. That is false. because ARNs are only for those who are the entity who is going to receive commission. Now, suppose HDFC Bank will be having ARN, but its employees will not have an ARN. Its employees will have only EUIN number, that is Employee Unique Identification Number. Those EUIN numbers will be attached to the ARN number. So you need to understand that every ARN can have multiple EUIN numbers, but all EUIN numbers is not necessary to have an ARN number. That we need to be clear of. Equity funds risk relative to market is measured by beta. Okay, risk is what? Volatility, how up and down the fund performance is compared to the benchmark. So if beta is going to tell you how volatile that will be, and that is the risk of the scheme. Standard risk is common to all because it will be for equity funds also, it will be for debt funds also, and this is the risk which cannot be mitigated or lessened, that we need to understand. Request of purchase can be made along with the requisite form and check. If your client wants to invest, he need to fill the form and he need to give the check. If an investor invests 10 lakh rupees at 3:30 p.m. through outstation check, he will get NAV of what? Whenever the funds get realized. Whenever you are investing, whether you're investing at 11 o'clock or 5 o'clock, whenever the money is going to be hitting the mutual fund bank account before the cutoff time, then only on that day NAV you are going to receive. Liquidity risk is highest in mid-cap funds. As I told you, that the equity will have the highest risk, and in equity, frontline stocks are large cap funds, index funds will be having a lower volatility, and mid cap funds will have the highest volatility. Mr. A holds 2000 units. I scheme declared a bonus 1:4. How many units will he have? Mr. A gets. So he's having 2000 units and the declared bonus is 1:4. It means what? For every 1 unit, he is going to receive 4 units more. So he is going to receive additional 8000 units that you need to calculate. Investors can sue the trust for breach of trust. Investor can sue the trustee, not the trust. So you need to remember this. Anytime there is any dispute, an investor can sue the trustees of the board of the trust of a mutual fund company, but they cannot sue the trust. Distributor does not get commission on self business. That's true if your ARN number and the ARN number of the ARN holder is same. That if your PAN number and the PAN number of ARN holder is same, you are not going to receive commission. So this is a simple logic which you need to understand. If your ARN number and ARN number of the ARN holder is same, you are not going to receive commission. So you need to be mindful of that. What remains constant in a closed-ended fund? Unit capital, because the buying and selling is only happening at the NFO period. Once the NFO is closed, nobody can buy more units into the scheme of a closed-ended fund. That's why unit capital will be always constant for a closed-ended fund. SEBI regulates mutual fund RTA depositories. Everyone has been will be regulated by SEBI. Unit holders can hold their units in demat form. That's true. Trail commissions are linked to valuation of portfolio in the market. Trail commission is linked to the market value of the investment, that we all know. So that is true. Risk can be measured by variance, standard deviation, beta. All these things can give us indication of the risk of the scheme. So any of the above is the correct answer. According to the Certified Financial Planners Board of Standards, the third stage of financial planning is analyzing and evaluating client's financial status. So the first thing is establishing and defining the client-planner relationship. You are going to tell what you are going to help your client with, what you are not going to your client with. Then the second step is gathering client data. And once you gather the data, you are going to analyze and evaluate client's financial status. So this is the first, this is the second, and this is the third. Okay. Private sector was permitted to enter mutual fund industry in India in the year 1993. So these numbers you need to remember. In 1993, I think HDFC and Reliance were the first one to get the approval. In India, the first mutual fund was established before SEBI regulation 1996. That's correct. UTI was established in 1963. I think they are not considering that. So just from the examination purpose, you need to remember this. Identify the correct statement. Investing in mutual fund is likely to be less risky compared to directly investing in a market. That's correct. A mutual fund enables a small investors build a diversified portfolio. Investments in mutual funds offer more liquidity. Now, please remember, mutual funds are the only investment vehicle where buyers and seller is same. That is mutual fund company. You can buy units from mutual fund company. You can sell units to mutual fund company. But if you are investing in real estate, you may buy from somebody else. You need to send to somebody else. So you need to find buyer also, and you need to find seller also. But in mutual funds, it is not there. In mutual fund, the buyer and seller will be same mutual fund company. So liquidity will always be there for the investor. When you invest in an open-ended mutual fund scheme, which of the following decisions is not taken by investor? The first two decisions. Which share to buy and which share to sell, that will be taken care by the fund manager, and you cannot tell him. What prospective charge changes it would be made in the load structure, that will be taken care by the mutual fund company. So as an investor, you cannot guide or you cannot tell a mutual fund company or a fund manager. So the first two decisions you need to take. The correct description of a mutual fund is, it is a company, it is a financial intermediary, it is a development financial institution, which is a non-banking financial company. So it is very obvious it is a financial intermediary which is going to collect money and invest in a capital market. The birthplace of mutual fund is US. The first mutual fund schemes were launched in US, so that you need to remember from the examination point of view. Important developments that took place in the mutual fund industry in February 2003 was repealing the UTI Act, establishing of UTI mutual fund, creating of a level playing field. So all these things were done. So you need to remember from the examination point of view, distributors are required to abide by the code of conduct as prescribed by SEBI. This code is based upon, this is some error. It is AGNI is the distributor code of conduct which we need to follow. For a customer holding units in Demat account, the AMC also requires to do his KYC. That is false. For customer holding units in Demat account, suppose a customer is holding in Demat account, this means what? The company in which he is having Demat account, they have already done the KYC of the client. So AMC don't have to do KYC. They need to just check whether the KYC is updated or not. If KYC is updated, then they don't have to do again. So these are the all 100 questions which we have discussed. And I hope you guys got some clarity today as how you need to build your logic when you are going to be filling up your or going to plan your examination. Did you guys got some clarity today? Yes or no?